Many Nigerians with dual citizenships from stronger countries believe that when they get into trouble with the Nigerian government in Nigeria, that their second country would save them. But that is not always true. Today, I want to show you a real case from another African country that applies almost perfectly to our situation back home in Nigeria. Mohammed Fahmy was an Egyptian-Canadian journalist who found himself sitting in an Egyptian prison in 2013. Canada was aware of his situation. Canada said it was trying, but Egypt wasn't moving. His colleague, an Australian who had no Egyptian roots, was freed and deported back to Australia. But Fahmy would end up spending over 400 days in prison. So, how does a dual Canadian citizen end up stranded in a prison in his home country while the Canadian government watches? This story is about the complications of dual citizenship when one is in trouble with their home government in their home country. How did this all start? Mohammed Fahmy was an Egyptian citizen by birth, but a Canadian by naturalization. In 2013, he was working in Egypt as a bureau chief for Al Jazeera English. In December of that year, Egyptian authorities arrested him along with two of his other colleagues. During the arrest, Fahmy's Egyptian and Canadian passports were both seized. And this will become relevant later when we talk about Canada's diplomatic efforts in this situation. Fahmy and his colleague were charged with broadcasting false news that would destabilize the Egyptian government, and they were sentenced to 7 years imprisonment. This was a very sensitive political moment in the country, and the government was cracking down hard on media they considered hostile. Kind of reminds you of the Nigerian government sometimes, right? Now, here's where it gets interesting. One of his colleagues, Peter, the Australian guy, he had no Egyptian roots. He was just a foreign journalist that came to report on news happening in the country. He was freed and deported back to Australia after a new law that enabled foreign prisoners to be deported and sent back to their country was passed. And also, the Australian government was very vocal in their call for his release because he had no ties with the country. He's just like pure foreigner, and he was imprisoned. But for Fahmy, it was different. Yes, he had Canadian citizenship, but he was also Egyptian, and this was Egypt. Canada could request, Canada could come visit, but Egypt knew they had a claim on him as their own citizen in the country. If you watch my previous video on dual citizenship, remember we talked about the master nationality rule, where dual citizens cannot receive diplomatic protection from their other country if they are in trouble with a country that also considers them citizens. Fahmy's case was just a real-life example of that. If you like discussions like this, I started a newsletter called Settled. It's about life after migration. I'll leave a link in the description so you can join. See you there. Canada said it did not stay quiet. They said they were doing quiet diplomacy, unlike the Australians that were very loud about theirs. Canadians were not happy with the response of the government. They asked the government to do more. The opposition was pressing the government to do more. And, lots of Canadians were writing petitions, people were speaking out over here in Canada just to push the Canadian government to do more for their citizen who was in prison abroad. Even as all these were going on, Egypt did not mind. They still kept Mohammed Fahmy in prison because, like we said, the master nationality rule, if you are a dual citizen and you are inside the borders of your other country, that country sees you as theirs first. They have the say over you. Your other country has limited legal standing to intervene. So it wasn't like Canada was being ignored out of disrespect. Canada was being told, this is our citizen on our soil, in our court. You can't tell us how to handle this. Stay in your lane. So at some point, it became clear to Fahmy that the only way to shift legal grounds here was for him to remove his country's claim on him and just be presented as a Canadian. Maybe if he was just Canadian, they would deport him back to Canada, like his colleague Peter was deported to Australia. At least that was what the security officials were telling him. So that was what he believed at the time. Fahmy said he didn't want to give up his birth citizenship, but the security officials encouraged him because that was the only way out, according to them. So Fahmy made a decision that no person should have to make under duress. From inside a prison cell, he reluctantly renounced his birth citizenship, the identity he had had all his life, signed away from his cell just to regain his freedom. On February 2015, he got out on bail. You would think this was the end of his ordeal and he would be deported back to Canada. But no, there was a twist. When I was researching this story, this was the part that threw me off guard entirely. After renouncing his birth citizenship, instead of deporting him back to Canada, they let him out on bail with heavy bail conditions, one of which was a travel ban. The court ruled that since he was Egyptian when the crimes were committed, that he would have to stand trial as a citizen rather than deporting him. Now, Fahmy was out of prison, but he was not free to leave. Remember his passports that were seized during his arrest? When he reapplied to have his Canadian passport reissued, Canada wouldn't issue him another one. They gave him a letter from the embassy to show that he is Canadian, but they wouldn't give him a passport. Canada's reasoning was that because he was on a travel ban, they didn't want to issue him a document he cannot legally use to travel. I'm sure they were also worried that if he found a way to travel out with his passport, that might rub the Egyptians in the wrong way, and they didn't want to muddy the diplomatic waters with the Egyptians. But Fahmy got his Canadian passport weeks later, after Canadians pressured the government. The opposition kept pressuring the government. They had to give him a Canadian passport. In September 2015, the Egyptian government pardoned Fahmy and he was finally able to travel to Canada. After which, he filed for a reinstatement of his Egyptian passport, which he got. So now he's still a dual citizen of both Canada and his birth country. Now replace Egypt with Nigeria and replace Canadian with British, American, or whatever your second passport is. If you are Nigerian and something happens to you inside Nigeria, Nigeria sees you as Nigerian first. Your second passport is not invincible, but the government that issued you that second passport cannot override Nigeria's sovereignty in Nigeria. Fahmy had international attention. Canada said they engaged diplomatically from the onset, and there were a lot of people interested in this case all over the world. And yet it came down to Egypt giving him a presidential pardon before he could regain his freedom. So what does this mean for Nigerians that are dual citizens? If you're going to Nigeria, do not expect your second government to come rescue you from the Nigerian government if you're in trouble with the Nigerian government in Nigeria. So you maintain your lane. Don't go looking for trouble like that guy in the joke that was saying, I'm an American man, and he got himself into Nigerian police trouble. Don't go shopping for trouble because you have a big government behind you. No, inside Nigeria, that government cannot help you as much as you would like to think. So there are no preferential treatment for you as a dual citizen. And also, if the Nigerian government sees you as a public enemy, know that if you are going to Nigeria, you are submitting yourself to the Nigerian government, and your second country may not be able to help you out. Even if they are willing to, their hands will be tied by international laws. That does not mean do not criticize the government. As a Nigerian, say what you need to say about the government. But know that it may actually be the local lawyers, the local activists on ground that will be able to help you when you get into trouble with the government. Your second country can still come to be pleading with the Nigerian government small, but it's those local people inside that will be able to help you. And I've seen comments of people saying, oh, every Nigerian administration know that because I carry so and so passport, I am untouchable. People that say things like that, they remind me of this saying we have in Benin. Nerowa no be police. It means the one that is never home that beats the police. When we're growing up, there's always this bros in every neighborhood. I don't know if you had that kind of bros in your neighborhood. The bros that is always vibrating when the police comes to take somebody, to arrest somebody and they are not home, they will come and say, why did you let this police take this person? What will we do now? What can we do? Police came to arrest somebody. He said, no, if I were home, that police wouldn't have carried this person. Say, bros, what will you do? Say, I will beat that police. Those people that are never home when the police is around. Until this has happened to you and your government have come to scatter ground, I bet let us hear word. Don't just assume that because you hold so and so passports that your government will come and scatter ground in Nigeria. It doesn't work like that. This case is a living proof to that. And even your government will tell you that if you are in your country, we may not be able to offer you assistance. Yes, they can come and visit you in prison if the Nigerian government allows it. Your second passport is real. Your rights are real. But inside Nigeria, Nigeria decides what those look like. Know this and know peace. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one.